Much to Boatus for inviting me, and thank you for Israeli Foundation and GOLDSTEIN Association for providing the fund for this outstanding workshop. And I would like to start with a quotation. One day, the master Max Theon, authored together with his royal passage of La Tradition Cosmique and Revue Cosmique, told to your journal collaborator, Marc Séménoff, the following words. Joy lies in achieving things. There is no balance. There is nothing but harmony. Enthusiasm must be firmly kept. One does not assess. One makes suppositions. There is no certainty. There are only suppositions. Nationalities are constellation. Vibration is life. There is no self. Self is compression, personality. The reason could be destructive. In passivity, one expands and opens himself. The self lends itself with the rest. This is impersonality. These are the first line of the article Pensées de Max Theon, which appeared in L'Astrosophie, the journal, on March 21, 1931. The journal was edited by Francis Roth-Wheeler. Marc Séménoff, who regularly contributed to the periodical in the 30s, published a series of articles on Russian mysticism herein in the same period. The cryptic message signed by ANDTHE, the other name for Max Theon, and dedicated to Séménoff does not only link the letter to the leader of a cosmic movement, but it involves a specific initiatory dimension. Other crucial themes of the same topic are introduced in a letter sent by Theon to Séménoff on October 7, 1918. Plenty of good to you, dear child. I see your eagerness and fervor, and I totally agree with you. I think you would understand, since you're craving for it, that there's no really need of a comprehension of the difference between a pathetizer, a magnetizer, a vitalizer, and an evaluator. One could be a good vitalizer, but not a pathetizer. And one could be a magnetizer, but not a pathetizer. An evaluator is not a good magnetizer, but an evaluator includes in himself all the qualities of the others, and he excels as evaluator. All those who wish to engage in this branch must learn and evolve a lot as to control over themselves. Subsequently, they achieve a specific position in hierarchy. In hierarchy was not really hierarchy, was not really written. Generally, the word pathotiseur, the French word, is often mistaken for a passion mingled with love. Therefore, a pathetizer cannot influence a passive who's not freed from all kind of conventionality. The two quotations represented do not only introduce pivotal concepts for the comprehension of La Tradition Cosmique content and Revue Cosmique issues, but they also offer an overview of Max Séménoff's thought and personal path. Specifically, a path virtually and spiritually connecting East and West, an ideal homeland, sometimes called Eurasia, and a spiritual homeland, the inner self of a man with the divine unity of the world. This itinerary is of initiatory nature, I beg your pardon, and as both Séménoff and successively Moise Benaroche Baraya, who later affirmed, initiation is the science and art of life. The origins of this path should be searched in cosmic movement milieu, and more specifically in Séménoff's literary production. In particular, we'll focus on two major works by Séménoff. That is, Retard, Introduction à la vie secrète, Introduction to a Secret Life, published in 1923, and De ligne mystérieuse à la Russie mystique, From Mysterious India to Mystical Russia, 1932. Before approaching the context and the genesis of these works, a brief introduction to the author is required. Marc's father was a renowned journalist and lawyer in Russian and French cultural milieus at the beginning of the century, and the names that we can find on many of his works are Eugene Séménoff and Yevgeny Petrovich Semyonov. These two names were, together many other pseudonyms, hiding the real name of Solomon Moisevich Kogan. Kogan Séménoff was born in 1861 in Veliko-Dolinsky, a rural settlement in Odessa district, Ukraine. In the first 20 years of his life, he achieved his degree in law at Odessa Mezhniko National University. Soon becoming a lawyer and a member of many different associations, in 1882 was arrested on the charge of an alleged collaboration with a leftist group, Narodna Volya, that is translated with People's Will or People's Freedom. He later moved and became General Secretary of Israeli propaganda mission to Petrograd. Following this event, Séménoff Sr. decided between 1884 and 1885 to emigrate to Switzerland. In the same period, and in unknown circumstances, Marc Yevgeny Semyonov came into the world in 1884. In the meanwhile, Séménoff Sr. began his career as journalist and started a biannual collaboration with the Swiss newspaper La Liberté of Freiburg. Thanks to its editor-in-chief of French and Jewish-Russian origins, Jean Mamazoussan. In 1888, in Lausanne, another member of Séménoff's family was born, Anna Yevgenia Semyonova. After the death of La Liberté editor-in-chief Séménoff Kogan, after the death of Soussan, Séménoff Kogan moved from Switzerland to France. 3 years later, he published one of his first works in French that allowed him to become popular in the Parisian cultural scene. Une page de la contre-révolution russe, les pogroms, a page of the Russian counter-revolution, the pogroms, prefaced by Nobel Prize Anatole France. In the early 10s, Séménoff Sr. went back to Russia, while Anne and Marc were regularly moving between two different countries. Through the biographical information of Séménoff's sister, we can determine that in the lapse of time from 1910 to 1914, she studied in St. Petersburg, tutored by the sculptor Ilya Yakovlevich Ginsburg. In 1970, while the Russian Revolution was brewing, Séménoff Sr., who was the editor-in-chief of Вечернее время, that is Evening Times, was a Russian daily in Petrograd. At the time, Séménoff Sr. fled from Petrograd to gather the archives of the newspaper, leaving his wife and daughter in Petrograd during the revolution. Not a really funny situation to cope with. In 1918, thanks to the Irish captain of British Army, Francis Cromie, just before the latter was massacred at the British embassy in Petrograd, Anna and her mother obtained a diplomatic permit, allowing them to flee first to Denmark, then to Sweden, and finally to Paris. The first times in Paris were difficult, and Anna was obliged to earn a living for herself and her mother by giving lessons of French and English. She then followed at the Academy in Montparnasse a course in sculpture. Twice a week, painter and sculptor Antoine Bourdelle came to correct her work and that of her comrades. Despite the prestigious name of Bourdelle, Anna reaped little profit from this experience, and thus she started working on her own. In 10 years, became renowned in artistic and literary circles. Proof of that is the bust of Claude Farrell, the writer, together with that of the philologist of Jewish origin, Theodor Reinach, who was brother of the most renowned history-religion scholar, Solomon Reinach. Anna's artistic production and acquaintances, however, were not limited to artistic and literary milieus. In two different art exhibitions in 1927 and 1929, she presented her bas relief of a Hindu poet and thinker, Rabindranath Tagore. In the same period, she also produced the sculpture of Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, better known as the decoder of French Spiritism, Allan Kardec. Anna's interest in spiritual and esoteric themes is overwhelmingly evident not only in these two pieces of works. As demonstrated here, other works of Anna Séménoff's production in early 30s focused on female characters and features somehow connected to the Egyptian civilization. This is a fundamental factor in understanding part of Marc's work. Before proceeding to analyze Marc's career, we should take heed of a series of elements. The context that will allow Séménoff's family to integrate themselves into Parisian society in tense is prevalently owed to members of Jewish Russian community, and the interest in the spiritual and esoteric issue is roused and nurtured in Séménoff's family once they get in touch with the Parisian artistic milieu. Crucial for both Anna and Marc will be the contact with the artist Raoul Dufy, together with whom Anna exposed her works in 1931 at the inauguration of Le Palais des Beaux-Arts, and art dealer, as you can see in the photo, together with Raoul Dufy and Klaus Pers, Marcel Berg de Thuric, as reported by Pascal Temandis. Marcel was the grandniece of a renowned member of Assembly of Notables and active supporter of Jewish emancipation in Nancy in 18th century, Berg Isaac Berg. His son, Michele Berg de Thuric, since his father died in Thuric in 1843, was a remarkable translator, teacher of German language, lawyer, and last but not the least, father of Marcel. Marcel Berg de Thuric, I beg your pardon, together with an editor, a bronze founder, and painter, Eugène Bloch, were one of the most active exponents for a Jewish intelligentsia in artistic and cultural milieux at the beginning of the 20th century. Both are fundamental figures in Marc's Séménoff biographical events and in the cosmic movement as well. Marc debuted on the French cultural scene by publishing his work Caserne. Despite the popularity of his work, we know from recently discovered materials that it was not his first attempt in general. As we can see from this slide, the first book ever written by Marc was Les Serviteurs du Soleil, Servants of Sun. This was a novel centered on the figure of Mercury in ancient Egypt, and we can consider it as his first approach to spiritual and esoteric topics. During the First World War, he enlisted and fought in the French army. In the 20s, in Paris, he was a renowned and well-appreciated translator. For the most part, his translations were from Russian to French. Amongst the authors he translated, whose works deeply influenced Séménoff's thought and production, we can list Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky, Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol, and, as you can see, in the esoteric field, Serge Marco Thun and Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. Related to Serge Marco Thun, Marc, together with his father Eugène, translated the work of Marc Othon, La science secrète des initiés et la pratique de la vie, The Secret Science of Initiated and the Practice of Life, published in 1928, translated from Russian to French. Marc Othon was in early 20s president of Ukrainian National Committee in Paris, whose function was to help and support Russian and Ukrainian refugees in France, not only in Paris. The committee was located in Paris, but was to help Russian and Ukrainian refugees all over the French country. Marc Othon was a lawyer and a commercial agent in Paris, and at the same time was also a prominent member of Ukrainian Freemasonry and Martinism. For what concerns the Parisian occult environment in the 30s, French surrealist and journalist Saran Alexandrian reported that both Séménoff and Marc Othon were not only regular visitors of Maria de Naglovska's science, that is in the photo, but they were Madame de Naglovska's personal assistants in ceremonies. But that's another story. Let us turn to Marc. Intense, Séménoff was a notorious translator and quite popular author of esoteric novels. As far as we know, at the same time was already married to pianist Denise Blot, daughter of Eugène. While the leader of the cosmic movement, Louis Manley, was already married to the other daughter of the art dealer, Claire, since 1996. Denise and Marc married just after the war. Together they joined and both became active members of the cosmic movement. Marc fought in the First World Conflict, and upon his return in 20s, he became General Secretary of the Mouvement Cosmique. In the same years, more specifically in 1919, members of the movement published a new periodical titled Art, Science et Peuple. The journal was edited by Salvatore Schiff, who was a plumber, a workman, a poet, and a not very successful state director. While Anna Séménoff was preparing her first exhibitions in Paris, Marc presumably became leader of the cosmic movement, and both Art, Science, Peuple and Le Mouvement Cosmique were publishing their last issue. Marc started to draft what successively became Introduction à la vie secrète. The book was published in 1923 by publishing house Del Peuple and is dedicated to Claire and Louis Manley, those who lead me towards this path. If we leaf through the pages of the work, we can immediately perceive a recurrent issue that we could resume in the following question. Does it exist an authentic initiatory path in the whole world? In this case, Séménoff's introduction to A Secret Life constitutes a manual not only to answer the question, but to understand the most cryptic passages that we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. More specifically, there is no self. Self is compression, personality. In passivity, one expands and opens himself. The self blends itself with the rest. This is the impersonality. And the other passage is, generally, the word pathotiseur is often mistaken for a passion mingled with love. Therefore, a pathotizer cannot influence a passive who is not freed from all kinds of conventionality. The first chapter of the works introduces explicitly the aim of the manual, that is to have access to a secret life. When does that happen? In Séménoff's word, when the soul or the superior self of a person can effectively communicate with the soul of a divinity. Despite technical terms derived from Les Dents Cosmiques, the first two volumes of La Tradition Cosmique, if not getting wrong, let us take let us take a step back from the final objective and see who should communicate with the superior soul or the soul of divinity. Here is the passage. The European man could get a better comprehension of the steps leading to the realization of the secret life that carries his thought towards this endless empire, that Asia Peninsula, where the origins of the several races are shrouded in mystery. There, where lies the original cause of the different cultures that disappeared long time ago, and whose traces are remaining in the civilization that succeed them. We should point out two elements in the quotation. First of all, the instruction to the realization of secret life are dedicated to a European man. Then the Asia Peninsula is considered the fertile ground where the roots of several civilizations grew up and are somehow surviving. Séménoff successively offers a general overview of some aspects of Hindu initiatory rites, specifically those linked to the figure of the sacred king. The condition of the sacred king is that of being divine, since he participates of the nature of divinity. According to Séménoff, this condition is equivalent to the royal neophyte, the first step in the initiatory path towards the secret life. A brief digression. Séménoff takes Hindu rites as sample for his general overview and comparison between Western and Eastern spirituality. The example of a sacred king is so included in a so defined Eurasian model. Proceeding in the text, we find another crucial step in the initiatory towards the secret life. That is, the man, the neophyte, reads, and his act of reading is alternatively or simultaneously external and internal. Skipping thousands of examples of what belongs to external reading and what to internal reading, we will resume by saying that the neophyte should develop his inner sense. This special sense is nothing less than to let the real self emerge in the individual. The passivity, in this case, is the mean to liberate the inner self and the authentic self, desire. Through desire, a neophyte could approach the sacred texts of the other civilization and understand a deeper, concealed sense of the scriptures. In Séménoff's words, the initiatory teaching is given to man of desire by the means of books. These books are La Tradition Cosmique, La Revue Cosmique, and other works and preparatory brochures. These works, published by Cosmic Movement, represent the most accurate philosophical synthesis of in modern times. Apart the approach and the choice of texts, another peculiar factor is worthy of being extrapolated from this work, the pathotic force. In order to make possible the conjunction between the soul of an individual with the divine one, the neophyte should know of what his body consists. There are 4 layers in the existential condition of a human being, and those disposed following an evolutionary order: a neurophysical layer, an astral body, a psychic body where the superior emotions lie, namely the emotional part of the soul, of the evolved soul, and last, a mental body, the organ of intelligence, the intellectual part of the evolved soul. The next step in the spiritual evolution initiatory path of the subject is described in the following passage. Each layer must be permeated by a pathotic, from Greek word pathos, supreme affinity, love. Spiritual intellect, I beg your pardon. Start again. Each layer must be permeated by a pathotic, from Greek word pathos, that is supreme affinity, love. spiritual, intellectual, vital substances, a quaternary force, and this force is universal, but it does not manifest itself universally, but only to meet up with what has much affinity with it. The affinity is the motive power of the substances, the reason of its existence. Unfortunately, we do not have much time a chance to treat all the other steps of the initiatory path, but we would like to accentuate a peculiar feature of his spiritual itinerary. The process towards the secret life is not a movement towards a specific physical place. The comprehension of their own nature leads the neophyte to an ideal spiritual place, where their soul will meet the divine one. Before proceeding to the analysis of the ligne mystérieuse à la Russie mystique, we would like to recall a passage from Marc's letter to Séménoff. Nationalities are constellations. As mentioned in the opening, the work was published in 1932 by Le Marie Publishing House in Paris. The volume is divided in 13 chapters, 9 of which are dedicated to personalities of the European cultural milieu in the 30s. Amongst the names we find Francis Orwiller, Paul Le Marie, the editor, Marcel and Stéphane Berdituric, and the whole chapter is in fact dedicated to Salvatore Schiff. There are 3 facts to highlight. Some chapters of the books already appeared on the journal mentioned at the very beginning, La Philosophie. 9 chapters were dedicated to figures belonging to esoteric and cultural milieus. The linde is the link between the works of the early 20s. This element should bring us to an immediate consideration. That is, Séménoff's work is not an homogeneous text written in a specific short lapse of time. The linde is composed of many contributions treating different topics, each one developed in different periods of his life. This book is a series, a collection of the initiatory experiences from all over the world. Séménoff describes his work as a message, a compendium, a manual to make Europe the spiritual leader of humankind. Directly from the introduction of the linde, we read, "You should," refer to Europe, "you should, Europe, accomplish the spiritual effort of becoming the continent of the divine order, revelation of a social evolutionary order." In the work of Marc Séménoff, we have the opportunity to come across different things that unfortunately we can't list since we do not have much time. So we pass directly to the most important part, that the linde is literally, the ligne mystérieuse is literally disseminated everywhere with quotations of the following 3 works: La Mission des Juifs of Alexandre Saint-Hyacinthe, Histoire philosophique de Jean Goumen, and La langue hébraïque restituée of Fabre Antoine d'Olivet, that are the main sources, and they have their only reference on one of the chapters of the ligne mystérieuse, not yet, thanks anyway. Their only reference in the chapter dedicated to Kabbalah. The only reference to Kabbalah is the chapter dedicated to Fabre Antoine d'Olivet, and the references to La langue hébraïque restituée. But there are no other reference to numerology to Kabbalah in the ligne mystérieuse de la Russie mystique. Now I would like to focus, I promise I'm going to finish soon, in the 13th chapter of the ligne mystérieuse de la Russie mystique, that is mysticisme plus mysticisme européen, Russian mysticism and European mysticism. The chapter is dedicated to Georgette and Jean Gelezot, respectively daughter-in-law and son of César Gelezot. The latter was a pianist, a composer, and teacher of Claire and Denise Blot. Going back to mysticism plus mysticism European, it opens by relating a few historical events that unfortunately we can't list. I would like to end with a most important quotation from the chapter, that is a quotation involving the most important character belong to Séménoff of the Russian culture in 19th century, that is Vladimir Solovyov, that say in his works, the essential principle of Russian history, the objective of Russia is to directly and universally serve the Christian cause, for which the state ideology and the culture of the century are not the only means in order to allow Europe to develop spiritually. For Holy Russia, there must be a holy war, the union between West and East, the human and divine humanity of the universal church to Christian in Russian. Russian, through imitation of Christ, must subdue the authority of the state, the power of the Son, under the power of the universal church, the holiness of the Father, and giving right place to the freedom, would allow the prophetic action of the Holy Ghost to revelate himself in Russia. I guess the meaning of this quotation is to reveal an spiritual, ideal homeland to the people, to the members pertaining a spiritual path, an initiatory path that allow themselves to find not only themselves, not to reveal their inner selves, as we have seen through this quaternary patriotic force, but also to find an ideal place where to find a perfect degree of spiritual evolution. Thank you for your time, for your attention.